I really did not like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. It brings me no joy to say that as a big fan of his 3 previous films, but I think it's a poorly written movie. I take many issues with the movie, some big and some small, but today I want to focus on the central theme at the core of the story. Nosferatu 2024 is a movie about evil, among other things. The central thematic question of the film is posed explicitly by Lily Rose Depp's character Ellen when she says,
"Does evil come from within us, or from beyond?"
So, what does the film have to say about this question? Is the evil that besets Ellen in the form of Count Orlock an entirely external force? Is it a manifestation of her own inner darkness? Or perhaps some combination of both? Well, first we need to lay out Ellen's story. Ellen is a troubled young woman with some vague, Shining-esque, supernatural, precognitive, and even telepathic abilities that seem to manifest themselves in dreams. We learn that Ellen has had these abilities since childhood, but they worsened when she entered womanhood, and her family was frightened by her. Ellen describes having some sort of sleepwalking incident and being found naked by her father, who shames her and threatens to send her away to, presumably, a mental hospital. In her isolation and depression, she reached out to some sort of supernatural spirit, any spirit that would bring her comfort. And in so doing, Ellen accidentally awakened an evil demonic spirit in the form of the vampire Count Orlock. Ellen summons Orlock and makes a pledge to be his ever eternally. Ellen then starts experiencing blissful sexual pleasure for a moment before it quickly turns violent and terrifying. So what does this tell us? Already we know that the demon is summoned as a direct result of the loneliness and despair she feels inside. But why does her cry for help summon a demon? There's nothing in her cry that's explicitly dark or nefarious. There's something quite funny about the fact that she reaches out to a guardian angel for comfort and gets a demon instead. But why? Is this all just a cruel, ironic turn of fate because she made the mistake of saying any spirit instead of specifying only a good spirit, please? Or is there something about Ellen that attracts the evil spirit? Well, the demon appears to her, looking quite obviously demonic, I might add, and she agrees to make an eternal vow to it. To me, this suggests that there is something inside of her that is attracted to the demonic spirit. It's not made explicit, but it's not hard to imagine that Ellen would have felt some resentment towards her family, especially her father, for the way they treated her. So is Orlock the manifestation of her own internal darkness, or is it an external force of evil that is summoned by Ellen's own internal darkness? Well, Ellen has recurring dreams and fantasies involving Orlock along these lines until she meets Thomas. His love brings her out of melancholy and despair. Ellen marries Thomas and things are looking up, but once the honeymoon is over, the darkness returns. Orlock is apparently not happy about Thomas's coming between them and has come to reclaim her. In an effort to convince Thomas not to embark on his work trip to Transylvania, Ellen tells him about her ominous dream, in which she gets married not to Thomas, but rather to death itself. In the dream, after exchanging vows and embracing, Ellen turns around to notice that everyone in attendance, specifically mentioning her father, is dead. She closes by saying that the stench of their bodies was horrible, but that she had never been so happy as in that moment.
Never speak these things aloud. No.
Okay, so it is once again heavily implied that a part of Ellen's psyche is drawn to this demon, that there is a darkness within her that is manifesting in these dreams. I mean, she dreams of seeing her father and the rest of her family dead, and that makes her the happiest she's ever felt, alright? So, to me, this precludes the idea that the evil that besets her comes purely from beyond. One could argue that the dream is purely the influence of Orlock poisoning her innocent mind, and that none of these darker thoughts and feelings are coming from within her. However, I would argue that the only reason the dream has any effect on Ellen is because it resonates with something within her. So Thomas leaves on his journey, and Ellen is left in the care of Thomas's friend, Friedrich. Ellen begins sleepwalking, experiencing more and more dreams and fantasies of Orlock, eventually suffering from what appear to be epileptic seizures. Her condition worsens until her doctor decides to consult Willem Dafoe's character, an eccentric, disgraced doctor named von Franz. Von Franz, unlike the others, believes Ellen, and concludes that she is beset by an evil spirit. As the story continues, her nightly dreams and fantasies worsen and begin to resemble demonic possession. One night, Orlock comes to her in a dream. Ellen tells Orlock that she has felt him like a serpent crawling in her body. Orlock responds,
"It is not me. It is your nature."
No.
Orlock tells Ellen that he has existed for centuries in a pit of darkness until she called him forth. He says that she is his affliction. When Ellen rejects Orlock, he becomes very angry and threatens to kill everyone she loves night after night until she finally relents and agrees to be with him. Now, for reasons I've mentioned already, I think we can comfortably dispense with the idea that Ellen is a perfectly pure and innocent being with no darkness within her whatsoever. Clearly something within her attracts and is attracted to Count Orlock. So, that leaves us with two remaining options. The first is that Orlock is fully correct when he says that the serpent Ellen feels crawling around inside of her body is her own evil nature. That would make Orlock just an outward manifestation of her own internal darkness. Orlock describes existing in a pit of darkness for centuries as a loathsome beast until Ellen comes along. If you take that literally, it could lend some credence to the idea that Ellen's internal darkness essentially created him by calling him forth out of nothing. However, the movie makes quite clear elsewhere that Orlock is and has been a force and agent in the world long before Ellen came along. We know that he's been wreaking havoc on peasants and gypsies and such in Eastern Europe for centuries.
Castle Orlock beyond
And we even learn from a nun that Orlock was once a dark enchanter who made a deal with the devil to become immortal. So I think we must take what he says here metaphorically. With that in mind, I don't think we can interpret Orlock in this story as a mere representation of the internal darkness inside Ellen. This leaves us with only one plausible answer to Ellen's initial question left, and the answer is that it's both. There is a serpent inside of Ellen, so to speak, that attracts and is attracted to Orlock, but it is not the same thing as Orlock. Evil does not come exclusively from within or from beyond. It's both.
¿Por qué no los dos?
So Orlock does as promised and starts killing more and more people. Tensions boil over one night and Ellen and Thomas get into an argument. Thomas wants to flee the city in order to protect Ellen, but Ellen refuses. Thomas says that there is a devil that is after her, and Ellen says that she already knows. She tells him that she brought this evil upon them by calling forth Orlock to begin with. She says that Orlock is her shame and her melancholy, that Orlock took her as his lover then, and now he has come back for her. Thomas tries to comfort her, but she rejects him. Then her mood changes abruptly. Ellen scolds Thomas for not writing letters to her every day while on his journey as he originally promised. Thomas is taken aback by this. Ellen says that Orlock told her that Thomas was foolish and fearful and childish. She says that Orlock told her that Thomas sold her to Orlock for gold.
No!
Our love was supposed to be sacred!
please.
You never listen! But where is it? Your money, your promotion, your house? Where is that which is so precious to you?
Ellen grows even more hysterical and angry, yelling that none of this matters, that they never should have married, and that they are all already dead. Thomas says that he will go fetch a doctor, at which point her mood shifts abruptly once more. Ellen pleads with him in a submissive, sexual manner. Then she tells Thomas that he could never please her as Orlock could. This enrages Thomas, who then decides to angrily prove her wrong right then and there.
Yes! Let him see! Let him see our love!
Thomas gets freaked out. Ellen cackles and tells Thomas that he has unloosed a demon. Thomas responds that he loves her, which finally breaks Ellen out of this spell of seeming possession. Ellen says that she is unclean and starts sobbing, and Thomas vows not to leave her. So, what's going on here? Well, the most straightforward read is that Ellen's abrupt mood swings are indeed caused by Orlock's otherworldly influence, but the things she says and does are nonetheless manifestations of things that she thinks and feels in the darkest parts of her subconscious. One might be tempted to argue that she is fully possessed by Orlock, and therefore nothing she says is coming from her. However, some of the things she says and does seem to cut against what Orlock wants, like her having sex with Thomas. And furthermore, Ellen's anger at Thomas for prioritizing making money to buy nice things over spending time with her is already well established before any possession takes place.
When I return, I will finally make something of myself. I shall buy us a fine house of our own with a maidservant.
We needn't any of that.
Therefore, it seems very difficult to argue that nothing Ellen says in this argument is coming from a deeper well of resentment and anger within her. Lastly, I would argue that the scene only has narrative weight because it does show us some of the unseemly aspects of Ellen's character and psyche. Based on what we've learned so far, it seems perfectly reasonable to conclude definitively at this point that the evil that besets Ellen is the result of Ellen's own subconscious capacity and desire for malevolence and evil, calling out to forces of malevolence and evil from beyond. You might assume at this point that the way to resolve this problem would necessarily have to involve Ellen recognizing the darkness within herself. But you would be wrong. Ellen and von Franz come to believe that in order to defeat Orlock and save the city, Ellen must allow herself to be fed upon by the vampire until dawn, sacrificing her own life in the process. And, importantly, that there is no other way of defeating Orlock. They allow Thomas to believe that the plan to stop Orlock will involve going to find Orlock's grave and then staking him through the heart. That way, Thomas won't be around to get in the way of what Ellen believes she must do. Ellen and von Franz get a moment alone to discuss this, and this, my friends, is probably the worst scene in the entire movie. Ellen says that Orlock's pull on her is, quote, so terrible, so powerful, yet my spirit cannot be evil as his. Von Franz replies, we must know evil to be able to destroy it. We must discover it within ourselves, and when we have, we must crucify the evil within us, or there is no salvation. Now I want to pause right there because von Franz presents what I would argue is a pretty succinct and compelling case that the answer to the question of does evil come from within or from beyond is that it's both. This is great. This is perfect as far as I'm concerned. This fits perfectly with how the film has lent itself to interpretation regarding the central thematic question, and it implies that Ellen must look to the evil inside her that has helped bring all of this on in order to defeat the evil that is Orlock himself, or else there will be no salvation. Perfect. Except that's not what happens. Ellen's response is, and I quote, I need no salvation. My entire life I have done no ill but heed my nature. I'm sorry, what? My entire life I have done no ill but heed my nature. Think about that. Think about the implications of that. Ellen is saying that her entire life she has done nothing wrong except listen to her own nature, which is to say that she has never done anything wrong, because how can one do anything but heed their own nature? There is no distinction made here between a higher and lower nature or anything of the sort. There is just her nature. And the problem with that is that anything anyone ever does could be framed as heeding their nature. Giving into any particular temptation would be heeding your nature, of course, because the temptation occurs naturally, as would resisting that temptation, because your nature is such that you are inclined to resist such temptations. There is no way to not heed your nature. So why does she say that? Why does she phrase it like that? Why not simply say, I need no salvation, for my entire life I have done no ill? Well, because it's absurd on its face. It's absurd to suggest that Ellen, or anyone for that matter, has never done anything wrong in their entire life, but it's worse than that. The reason she tacks on, but heed my own nature, is because there's a recognition there that she has in fact done ill in the world, but she is simply refusing to take any moral responsibility for it. I don't need salvation. I've never done anything wrong ever, except, be who I am. Could Count Orlock not say the same thing? I would actually expect Orlock to say something like this. Orlock's entire life he did no ill but heed his nature. Jeffrey Dahmer's entire life he did no ill but heed his nature. Adolf Hitler's entire life. Is the film really trying to say that evil doesn't exist at all because everyone is simply heeding their nature and they lack the free will to do anything else? Well, no, because the film speaks endlessly of the notion of evil.
Does evil come from within us or from beyond?
This evil cannot enter this house of God.
This evil, what it is, I know not.
I have brought this evil upon us.
We must know evil to be able to destroy it. We must discover it within ourselves. And when we have, we must crucify the evil within us.
The film believes that evil exists. It won't shut up about it, in fact.
I have wrestled with the devil as Jacob wrestled the angel in Peniel. And I tell you, if we are to tame darkness, we must first face that it exists.
Specifically calling Count Orlock and his actions and consequences on the world around him evil. As we've discussed already, the film makes it quite clear up until this point that the summoning of and pact with this external force of evil is brought on by the capacity for evil inside of Ellen. It even has von Franz explicitly make the case that Ellen must reckon with that inner darkness in order to defeat Orlock. But Ellen actually just says, nuh-uh. It's baffling. And before you think that this is just something that Ellen says before being corrected by von Franz, no. His response is, then heed your nature. And then he moves on. To say that von Franz's response makes no sense is a profound understatement. I mean, think about it. Did he not believe anything he just said 15 seconds ago? Does he not realize that Ellen completely rejected the entire ethical framework and worldview he just outlined? What the hell is going on? Hello? Von Franz, hello? Are you in there? Are you even a character? It is not just that von Franz inexplicably fails to counter what Ellen says here. The movie fails to as well. At no point from this conversation through the end of the movie is there any reckoning with or acknowledging of Ellen's own inner darkness. She actually just says, I don't have any inner darkness, and if I do, then it's not really my fault anyway, so I have nothing to reckon with or take responsibility for. And the movie says, yep, you're right. So, because the characters in the movie have closed off both the possibility of an alternative solution to the problem and the chance for any meaningful character growth, Ellen goes forward with the plan to surrender to Orlock, with the vague hope that giving Orlock exactly what he wants will kill him. And as it turns out, she's right. While the boys are out on their pointless side quest, Ellen beckons Orlock come to her. He does. She repledges her oath to him. They kiss, and they lie down on the bed, where Orlock sucks her blood from her chest. It looks like Orlock has won. He got everything he wanted, right? But wait, what's this? The sun? Oh no, not the sun. So anyway, the sun kills him because he was sucking her blood so hard he got distracted and lost track of time. Ellen is not yet dead though. She lives just long enough for Thomas to return to her and hold her hand for a moment before she then dies as well. Oh no, how tragic. Alright, I wanted to stay focused on the thematic aspect of the film, but I feel I must talk about how insanely contrived this all is. Let's start at the beginning. Thomas is the first character in this story to learn anything about how to fight and kill a vampire. First, he is provided a crucifix and told to pray by an old woman who is trying to protect him. Next, in what he first believes is a dream, but then later realizes wasn't a dream, he sees some gypsies kill a vampire that they find sleeping in its grave by staking it through the heart. Later, he finds Orlock sleeping in his grave and tries to stake him, but Orlock wakes just in time and prevents him from doing so. Please note that this doesn't mean that staking him successfully wouldn't have killed him. Thomas, once he escapes Orlock's castle, will run into some nuns who nurse him back to health. They tell him, among other things, that he is safe in this church because Orlock's evil cannot enter a house of God. Thomas insists that he must return to save Ellen from Orlock, but when he gets there, does he insist on keeping her in a local church for her own protection? No. But why not? Does he even insist she surround herself with religious symbols and icons for protection? No. But why not? Does he tell Ellen, Von Franz, Friedrich, or Sievers about what he saw the gypsies do to kill a vampire? Nope. But why not? Does Thomas seek to consult the expertise of, I don't know, a priest or nun, instead of the kooky, disgraced alchemy expert who admits to knowing nothing about vampires except that they exist? Nope. Speaking of, Von Franz is the only other character to have any knowledge about how to fight or destroy vampires, and he doesn't learn anything about them until quite late in the story. So, what does he learn? Well, he says that there are many different accounts, but they all stipulate that a vampire must sleep in his grave during the day, specifically that he must return to his grave before first cocks crow. Later, he will read the following in one specific book that he finds in the possession of Orlock's disciple.
And lo, the maiden fair did offer up her love unto the beast, and with him lay in close embrace until the first cock crow. Her willing sacrifice thus broke the curse and freed them from the plague of Nosferatu.
This is enough to convince Von Franz that Ellen must die. Now you'll notice that nowhere does that passage mention that this is the only way. So why does he assume that it's the only way? Surely you would think that anyone who cared about Ellen, as Von Franz at least pretends to, would try to do everything in their power to find a way that doesn't mean letting the vampire kill her. But not Von Franz. Von Franz does the exact opposite. Remember that he's read many different accounts that all stipulate that a vampire must rest in his grave before sunrise, and only one account that specified that a fair maiden once sacrificed herself in order to accomplish that goal. And so naturally, he concludes that the only way to kill Orlock is to let Ellen die. Von Franz will even tell Thomas and others that they have to sanctify the earth and destroy Orlock's coffin such that he can have no sanctuary when the sun rises. But we will learn that this is all just a ruse to distract Thomas so that he won't interfere with Ellen sacrificing herself. But why wouldn't that work? Why wouldn't that be sufficient, actually? The movie has no good answer for this. The movie instead insists, without evidence, that even though it's the morning sun that kills Orlock, Ellen giving in to the demon and letting it have its way with her is the only way to defeat it. Why? Because destiny, or some bullshit.
In vain you run, in vain you cannot outrun her destiny!
So Ellen just gives herself up to the demon, pledging an oath of eternal loyalty to an evil vampire, and then letting it kill her, so that hopefully it becomes distracted and forgets that the sun is coming up, all on the completely unfounded notion that there is no other way. Great. Anyway, with that tangent out of the way, let's return to the main thematic question of the film, shall we?
Does evil come from within us or from beyond?
With the ending in mind, what have we learned? Well, I would say that we've only unlearned things, actually. The film clearly established the idea that evil exists both beyond us and within us, and that in order to defeat evil in the world, we must first defeat the evil within ourselves. But then, it immediately threw that idea directly into the garbage. Instead, Ellen doesn't need to even acknowledge the evil inside of her, let alone defeat it. The movie makes pretty clear that it believes she bears no moral responsibility for attracting or being attracted to the evil that Orlock represents. But here's the thing, the film makes quite a big deal about Ellen's willing sacrifice in the end, so does she have moral agency or not? You don't get to remove her responsibility for literally making a pact with evil and then give her credit for sacrificing herself to save everyone in the end. Either her noble self-sacrifice that redeems the world was willing, or all she ever did was heed her nature and fulfill her predestined role, in which case her death wasn't noble, sacrificial, or even willing for that matter. So, what are we meant to conclude about all of this? Well, it's clear that the movie expects you to conclude that her death was tragic but noble, and not think about it too much. If you do think about it too much, however, the most straightforward thing to conclude is that Nosferatu is a thematically, ethically, and spiritually confused mess.